Houston Dynamo, Portland Timbers, Sporting Kansas, Los Angeles Galaxy,
Pitch Pass,
Toronto FC, Real Salt Lake, Chicago Fire, Columbus Crew, FC Dallas, New York Red Bulls.
Pitch Pass, your all-access credential to the people that matter in MLS. Here's your host, Greg Roach.
Welcome to Pitch Pass. How are you? Good. There is a lot going on in the world, and I think that we need to talk to an expert in the world of American soccer, and specifically MLS. That's what we're going to do in just a few moments. But first, I got to tell you to go to pitchpass.com. If you've downloaded the show through iTunes, then you didn't need to go to pitchpass.com. But I would ask you to go there. And if you did download through iTunes, thank you for subscribing there. We're hopefully making it a little bit easier for you and your friends to find through iTunes, and hopefully that'll happen sometime later on this week. If you do want to spread the word about the show, we'd appreciate it. One of the best and easiest ways for you is when you get the show through iTunes, rate it. And if you could leave a comment in the comment section, that will be even better. But once you go to pitchpass.com, you'll see that it's not just this podcast. It's also some blogs, some columns written by the great Sebastian Salazar of Comcast Sportsnet Houston, and some other things as well. So make sure you get to pitchpass.com. There was my plug. Now, let's get into the show. I told you we needed to bring in an expert on American soccer and specifically MLS. He's actually an expert for NBC Sports Network, not just in American soccer, but now for their Barclays Premier League coverage. He is Kyle Martino, and he joins us right now on Pitch Pass. How are you?
I'm good.
I was actually looking at some pictures that Aleko Eskandarian posted last week on Twitter on his Instagram account, and you were featured in one of them. I guess, I don't know if you guys were in some sort of youth tournament or whatever, but it was interesting just to see you guys as youngsters, and then it kind of hit me. You could still be out there playing. Do you think about that often?
I did when I first stopped playing. I would say maybe 2012 when I went for a jog and got so winded that I needed to stop halfway through and just walk home. I realized that those playing days are done, man.
Well, let me ask you, where do you think you would be right now if you were still playing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, there was a lot of build up towards the end of the sort of World Cup cycle. Right before I hurt my hip the first time, I'd gotten my Italian citizenship and was going to try to make the move and go overseas, and never really recovered from that hip and just had injury after injury. Hurt my ankle really bad in the Confederations Cup, and everything sort of just got blurry after that, and completely derailed. So it's hard to imagine what would have happened if that hip injury didn't happen. But I would have loved to have been the type of guy that Landon Donovan's been, which is an ambassador for this league, and spent your whole career here and found a team that you loved, that loved you back, and won trophies with it. That's
interesting that you would say that, Kyle, because I was reading between the lines on your comment, and I was just assuming that your next comment was going to be, well, I probably will be signing a $5 million DP contract like Clint Dempsey did as a returning hero to MLS.
Yeah, I mean that's it's funny when I first got into the league, it's a total paradigm shift. I have a new view because when I first got into the league, it really was looked at as a stepping stone. It was looked at as this is where I'll start, and then hopefully I can progress enough to make the U.S. team. And once I make the U.S. team, I can make the jump to Europe. And I don't know if young Americans are thinking that way anymore. And I think the Clint Dempsey contract is definitely the first big initiative from Major League Soccer to turn the heads of these young kids and say, listen, you don't have to go over there to make, big money or get on the U.S. team. Two of the best American soccer players right now, I'd say 2 out of the 3 are playing in Major League Soccer, and a lot of young, bright stars are signing these big contracts. So, it's funny. Back then, of course, I probably would have said right when I got in the league, the dream is to get to Europe. The dream is to play in the Premier League. The dream is to play overseas. But there's been a paradigm shift lately, and I'm thinking on the new wavelengths as opposed to what what my thoughts would have been way back then.
Yeah, and I have a couple more questions about your career and your post-career, but you brought up a point that is, I think, is really, really interesting. And especially, I know you don't want to disparage any current players, but you look at someone like Juan Agudelo, who seems like his only goal is that kind of old school thinking of all I'm doing is using this league to get overseas. And I think back in the day, and when I say back in the day, even 5 years ago, we could look at his move and say to ourselves, okay, look, maybe he won't develop to the optimal player that he could have been if he'd stayed in MLS, but he's going to get paid. He doesn't have to worry about his future after his playing days are over. But 5 years later, are we still in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's hard to turn down a move to the biggest league in the world. I mean, no one's going to sit and argue that the Premier League isn't the biggest league in the world. So let's just all accept that. And the fact that moving from MLS to the Premier League is a step up, of course. But if he goes over there and doesn't play, if he goes over there and sits on the bench, and what happens to him ends up being what happened to a player like Eddie Johnson, is it worth it? It was. Yeah, of course you want to say that you did it, and you want to say that you gave it a shot. But what happens, Eddie Johnson's actually an anomaly. I mean, to be able to come back and have a resurgence like he's had is absolutely incredible. But a lot of people go over there, it doesn't pan out. They don't play a lot. They lose some development. They have a drop in confidence, and that's kind of the last you hear of them sometimes.
You look at a guy like Brek Shea and the situation he's in. I know injuries are playing a big role. You look at Freddie, who probably is the poster boy for this type of conversation. How many more guys do you think need to go over there and do that, a.k.a. get the big money deal? You say the biggest league in the world, but if you're playing in the reserve team, if that for the biggest league in the world, are you playing in the biggest league in the world? When you can look back and you look at a guy like Chris Pontius, who just signed a deal for over $300,000. You look at what they're saying. Graham Zusi is another one. You look at the next generation, guys who are Agudelo's age, like Okogu, and you think to yourselves, what kind of deal is he going to get when his deal's up to stay in the U.S.? And you think to yourself, well, is a $350,000 contract that much of a problem when you're 22 years old and it's a 3-year deal, and then you can go over at 25, and then even if you want to make more money, that opportunity is still available for you? Is that a problem?
No, it's definitely not a problem. But, I think the one thing to play devil's advocate these players would say to you is, who knows if this opportunity pops up again? Who knows if, and I could easily comment on that. Who knows what my career would have been like if I didn't tear my hip that first time. Yeah. And, part of me would say, man, I really wish I would have gone over there before I hurt myself, and who knows what would have happened. But, that's, I think, the tough one that you'll hear a lot of young kids say is, this might be my only chance. This is a window. I got to take it. But I think the backup plan in these young American players' minds of MLS is not as big of a drop off or as large of a variance as it was in the past. I mean, it's a great plan B, and a lot of these guys like Graham Zusi and Omar Gonzalez are showing that it's their plan A.
Let's talk about Omar Gonzalez for a second. To me, that was even a bigger deal than the Clint Dempsey deal. Clint Dempsey is Clint Dempsey. He's a forward. He is one of the most decorated American soccer players in the history of the sport and the country. Omar Gonzalez is a guy who hasn't proved himself on the big stage yet. He is a first team or a first choice selection for Jurgen Klinsmann right now, but that's in CONCACAF. We haven't seen him up on the international stage. To me, that's a bigger deal. That signing is a bigger deal than Clint Dempsey. Do you agree or disagree?
I agree in terms of the retention of young up and coming talent. I think the Clint Dempsey signing will have a greater effect, a ripple effect, and will affect more around the sort of message of, star American players in MLS. But as far as young players coming up, we just talked about the Omar Gonzalez's of the past. When Carlos Bocanegra was here, he played his contract out and went overseas and thought, if I re-enter MLS, I'm going to get locked up. I can't leave. So you always saw these players in the past that would say, I'm not going to sign a new deal. It doesn't matter what it is. I want to go. And now you're seeing young guys say, listen, I'm going to sign a deal because we now market. People are coming after American players. They're okay paying a $4 million transfer fee when no one would have done that in the past. So I think the reason it helps is because it's a defender, like you said. I mean, DP American defender.
Yeah.
You thought it'd be 10 years from now before we were saying that word. And also, this is really smart for Omar because it's a World Cup year. He's playing really well for the LA Galaxy. Bruce Arenas is a terrific coach, the best coach I've ever had. And, why shake things up when you're putting yourself in a great position to potentially start the center back position at the World Cup in Brazil? But also, he's got some developing to do. I think so much of Omar Gonzalez. I think he's going to be a terrific player. He can eventually play in any league around the world. But I think he's still got a little bit of developing to do, and LA Galaxy is the perfect place for him to do it.
I don't believe I'm going to say this because I've always been a proponent of players making as much money as possible, and I still think that way, but there is a part of me that thinks to myself, is this escalating too quickly? You said this probably wouldn't be something that we could foresee until 10 years down the road, a defender, an American defender getting a DP contract. Well, we've got it now, and it's a significant one if the rumors are to be believed. Is that a bad omen for the future as far as the league having to pay money out that maybe it doesn't have right now?
No, I don't think so. I think the league they have a major initiative right now, and they're demonstrating it with the retention funds that they've added to keep young, talented American players that are breaking into the U.S. national team, that are U.S. national team starters. And Graham Zusi and Omar Gonzalez are the first sort of two examples for me of this new move to say, let's lock these guys up. Let's show them that we believe in them. We'll invest in them, and we're not going to buy them back, for 5-10 years from now. We're going to keep them here. So I think that the investment they're making right now is not nearly as much as the investment they have to make to bring a lot of these guys back, especially when you look at what just happened with Clint. So you let Omar Gonzalez go, and if you want to get him back in the league and he's the captain for the U.S. national team one day, or he's the center back starting for Inter Milan or wherever he is, you're going to have to pay through the roof to try to bring him back to the league at that point. So just don't even let him go in the first place. Interesting
question for you. Just reading between the lines on conversations that we've had in the past, where are you with the union releasing players' salary? Is that a good thing in your mind as a former player, or is that something that causes some more problems than it's worth?
It was a necessary thing because I completely understand and appreciate the MLS and their need to minimize costs and to try to keep salaries low. I completely get the business aspect of that, but the tough part that was happening for players is they had no negotiating power because it was a single entity. And MLS would kind of sometimes play this good cop, bad cop with club teams and say, we want to pay you, but your club doesn't. The club would say, we want to pay you, but the MLS doesn't. So it was necessary for players to understand what another player with the same goals or assists or getting into the national team and caps or whatever it was, the metrics you use to try to measure your value. You could see now what some of those guys were making across the league. And now finally you could really go in and have a little bit of negotiating power, because without teams and free agency and teams being able to grab you if another team won't pay you, you really had no way of trying to up your earning potential. So it was necessary back then. As the money gets big, it will become, and as free agency comes in, it will become like Major League Baseball and NBA and NFL, where it's not released and people try to take a guess. But I think it's still necessary for guys that really want to try to get some earning potential.
How far away do you think we are from a fourth DP or maybe even a fifth DP in the league?
You said fourth DP?
Yes.
You mean per team?
Per team.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're too far. I think the DP thing is right now. I think it was necessary because not one player can change a team. You can't go. You buy Lothar Matthäus and some of these guys they tried to buy and think that was going to make a big difference. So the three I thought was a stretch for them when they first let them do it. Eventually, what's going to happen before they start adding more DPs, they're going to unlock this thing and let owners kind of go do what they want, and then give them a sort of a cap to work within, but say, listen, if you want to go spend money to get someone here, that's great, but this is kind of where the salaries have to be. I think that happens before we get to 5, 6, 7, 8 DPs. I think eventually they just say, all right, owners, go for it.
Well, and there's a great follow-up. So what do you think the tipping point is to the DPs don't make sense anymore? Here's a cap, and let's just make sure we stay on the cap.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, listen, Don Garber, I give him so much credit. It's been a very difficult job, and he's had to take some educated risks a lot of times, and I would say the majority of the time they've paid off. And they've come through, and his risks have helped the league. And but he's been smart about it. He knew that the ultimate death of the league would be to unlock things too early, and spend way more than could sustain this league. So I have no idea. It's so hard to guess when. I'm sure they've got some sort of guru marketing accounting department that's figuring out when's the threshold to flip the switch, but I have no idea when it is.
And I talked to Brian Strauss last week of Sports Illustrated about this, and for me, it's hard to reconcile. It's the same thing with the players getting paid. I want my league to be here for the long haul, 20 years down the road. And if we have salaries that are escalating out of control, when we dump the single entity model, we go to a hard cap that's raised enough so that you can afford multiple multi-million-dollar players, and then we don't have the league in 5 years, that'll be a disappointment. I don't want this to be an NASL situation. Am I crazy to think that way, or do the safeguards in place kind of protect the league from being a short-term failure for long-term success?
Well, I mean, it's absolutely necessary now because, if you look at the growth of the league, attendance, season ticket holders, I mean, the stadiums coming in, the investment, $100 million from the Manchester City and the Sheikh Mansour Abu Dhabi royal family. I mean, there are so many signs that this thing's headed in the right direction. The last thing that really needs to come, which is ironic because that's my department, is the ratings need to start going up. And once that happens, that's what's going to start to flood capital into this thing that will, I think, finally give them the confidence to flip the switch where this thing can sustain itself, and you can let billionaires go spend money, and it's their their pocket. If they lose that investment, it's on them. But you'll have a league that has a lot of capital pumping in to the teams based on huge TV rights that get renegotiated every 3 years and keep going up and keep pumping money back into the league.
So what you're saying is we can remove the safeguards when we have the TV revenue to justify the fact that we don't need the safeguards.
Sure, because at this point, the gate is doing really well, right? I mean, there's, season ticket holders in Seattle, they have more for the Sounders than they do for the Seahawks. I mean, there's all of these examples of how well at the gate and in other areas of the business these teams are doing. The last piece, which is obviously going to be the most important, is ratings need to start going up. I mean, they've definitely been increasing, but we need to see big numbers and people watching and enjoying this game. When you see the World Cup numbers and you see that around the world, I mean, it absolutely trumps the Super Bowl. I mean, crushes it. More people watch the World Cup around the world. I mean, it's like 20 times what the Super Bowl is. So if we can get this league on the level that it's actually even appealing to, and David Beckham was the first time they did that, appealing to an international market. The globalization of these media rights and everything you're seeing with the Premier League is a huge moneymaker, and that's going to be the end game. When they say they want to be one of the biggest leagues in the world in 2020, America's the best sporting market in the world. Now they just got to sort of get everything to start moving in the directions where they can unlock it and let that money flow in. But who knows when it happens? Hopefully it happens soon.
And that's the concern, at least the way that I think about it is, we can tout Seattle's attendance all we want. We can talk about Portland's atmosphere all we want. We can talk about the resurgence of Sporting Kansas City after their rebrand, and that's all fine and dandy. We can be happy or at least optimistic about DC United finally getting a stadium. But as an MLS snob, I look at other leagues throughout the world, but I don't try to follow them as hardcore as my own league. But I did happen to switch by and saw Chivas play Puebla on TV. There were like 7 people in the stands for that match. And I think to myself, well, this atmosphere stinks. But then I also think to myself, there are probably 10 million people watching this match on TV, which reinforces the whole TV ratings matter more than what's going on actually in the stadiums.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the trouble is, we're the incumbents that we're trying to knock out have been here for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
I mean, you're trying to take out something that is so inherently American. And, that's no easy battle. We've watched it happen. We've watched, year after year, decade after decade, people unwilling to give the world's game a chance because of the threat it poses to a sport that they hold dear, that their father, their father's father, their father's father passed down to them.
I want to get into your experiences on the first weekend for Barclays Premier League with NBC Sports Network's coverage. But first, I do want to ask you one more thing about MLS, and that would be Landon Donovan's contract as it comes up at the end of the year. What are you feeling like? What is your gut telling you that where he will be come March of 2014?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Talking about money and everything getting announced, I'm sure. Well, let me not speak for Landon. If I was Landon, I would look at that and be a little bit upset because of everything I've done for the league and all the dedication and the talent that he has and the level of his soccer, to be making a fraction of what some of these other guys are making, I'm sure would bother me a little bit. Granted, he's still living really well and making a lot of money, but I think for the first time with his contract coming up, expiring after this year, this is the first time I really feel like it's a possibility that Landon will head over there and make it a permanent thing, not a loan, because he's playing some of the best soccer he's played. Had a hat trick the game before last. Had a terrific Gold Cup. He's really enjoying his soccer, and I saw it kind of fade for him a little bit because it did for me. I started to lose that love, and I could see it with him, and I definitely see that sparkle in his eye and that enjoyment back. So at the end of this year, I wouldn't be surprised if Landon made the hop overseas.
Okay. And I would understand that. And if I'm Landon, I agree with you. I'm looking at people's salaries and thinking to myself, wait a second, I need to be one of the highest paid players, not in the top whatever. He was higher paid than almost everybody else coming into this contract. He saw the contract. You could argue that his contract is coming up at the perfect time with the way the salaries have escalated and with Clint Dempsey's returned. But I would also then on the other side argue, well, he's not 27 years old trying to go overseas. He's 31, going to be 32 years old trying to go overseas. The Everton door, I would think, would be closed because David Moyes is at Manchester United. And I also don't think David Moyes brings in a 32-year-old American player to play in Manchester United to play. So how many options or how much leverage do you think he has with the league as he tries to negotiate a better deal as opposed to going overseas?
Oh, I think there's going to be plenty of options, and if you believe what Landon and his agent have said recently, that they've already received some of those offers, and things have already been coming in from overseas, and they already have those options. So, of course, it's a World Cup year, which sort of heightens and makes everything a little bit crazier, but the options will be there. To go play for Manchester United, no, that option is definitely not going to be there. But to go play for a lower table Premier League team, I do think that option could be there for Landon. As far as Everton's concerned, I know Moyes isn't there anymore, but the Everton fans absolutely loved Landon and would welcome him back with open arms. So it's going to be interesting because I'd love to see Landon stay here. He's done so much for this league. Why not finish it off? But I understand why he wants to go over if he's considering it, and I also understand why he'd be hearing those offers out. And if the MLS comes up with some more money for him, of course he's probably going to consider that and think about finishing his career in LA. But for the first time ever, I do think that the chances are better than they've been in the past that he's actually going to give this thing a shot and go over there.
And as I sit here and think about it, you could make a case, and you could probably be proven wrong, but you could make a case that a 32-year-old American making a big money move to even a mid-table Premier League team is just as big a deal as Clint Dempsey coming back for a big money deal. You don't see a lot of guys in their 30s make moves to Premier League, and you definitely never see it with Americans.
No, yeah, it would be pretty unique. But I think Landon definitely can do it. I think he'd be successful if he did it. But the good part about it is he doesn't have to do it. I don't think he has to do that to prove anything to anyone or prove anything to himself. The only reason he'd do it is if he thought that he would really enjoy it. I think Landon's definitely making decisions right now in his life and in his playing career based on where he thinks and what he thinks will bring him the most joy, not the most money, not the most acclaim, not the most respect. He just wants to go enjoy. You don't know how much longer you have, and he wants to make sure that these last years that he has are some of his best.
Is he a guy that likes or that needs to be challenged by someone else? And I ask that because if he does make a move overseas, what he did to the Galaxy at the beginning of this year definitely would not fly.
No, well, of course it wouldn't fly anywhere else. But here's the thing. Find another player like Landon Donovan that literally since he was a teenager was the hopes of building a game in a country. I mean, he had expectations on him, and I was there for most of them, that no other American athlete in this country has ever had. The pressures and the expectations based on you being really the only one asked for interviews, you being the only one brought into every single camp, you being the only one brought into every single media blitz for MLS. I mean, from the start, he's had more to deal with than any other American player ever has. So I've got a lot of sympathy for him because I watched it and watched how hard it was to deal with it, and he never really complained. He did it all. So finally, he wanted to take some time for himself, and some people had a problem with that, but look, Landon came back and he's a much better soccer player for it. So now are people upset that there's a better Landon Donovan back? I mean, I would hope not.
As we segue into your current gig, I got to ask you, you talked about your injuries and they eventually forced you from the game. How are you health-wise these days? I talked to Aleko Eskandarian, I talked to Taylor Twellman. You didn't have a head injury, but you did have an injury that you were told if you kept playing, you could do damage to yourself in the future. By stopping playing, are you now healthy or 100%?
Yeah, I'm 100% of 60%. I mean, if you'll notice when I'm calling games in the stadium, I have a stool next to me because I have to sit down every now and then, like an 80-year-old man. But I'm doing good. I've definitely stopped feeling sorry for myself. I had a long career. I had a blast. I got to do so many cool things. I made so many amazing friends. Got to meet so many incredible fans. And now I'm in love with the game in a completely different way for the first time in a long time. So, do the hips bother me every now and then? Yeah, but I mean, it's nothing. It's nothing that puts a frown on my face with what I get to do every day.
And I know you don't want to be compared to Landon Donovan, but as I hear you explain this, I think to myself that you kind of are in a similar situation as Landon Donovan. You're the only American voice on NBC Sports Network's Premier League coverage. A lot of Euro snobs, a lot of expats from England who are tuning into the channel to watch their matches. You're the guy that they're looking at going, well, who's this guy with the American accent? That's a lot. Do you understand that pressure? Do you feel that pressure? And what do you think about that pressure?
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. And, I saw it when I was at Fox covering the Premier League, but fortunately there was other Americans that I could deflect some of the criticism to every now and then. But no, I get it. Here's the thing. They're so passionate about their league. They're very protective about it. It's their baby. So I understand and completely appreciate, that they might be a little bit hypersensitive about, an outsider coming in to comment on or be considered an expert on their league. But here's the thing: the opening weekend, I knew that the first, mispronunciation or first stat I got wrong or first thing I said wrong, I was going to get crushed. And even if I didn't, I was going to get crushed by people anyway. And I was sort of prepared for that. But I was actually so overwhelmed and surprised with the response I got, which is a huge positive, because I was expecting Americans don't know anything, who's this American guy, this, that, and the response I got, and a response I got from a lot of expats was so supportive. And, I think there is a shift in that perception that, the accent and where you're from is more important than the content and what's actually coming out of your mouth. So I was definitely relieved, but also so excited and optimistic about the positive response I got from so many of those hardcore expats that are impossible to please. And I think it's a shift towards them just sort of accepting that we all just love this game. I grew up watching the Premier League. I grew up watching it too, and we're all such huge fans of this. So let's just all be big fans together. And there are going to be people that'll hate me, and that's the job that I get, and that's the spotlight I put myself in. So I can't feel sorry for myself, and I can't complain about that. And for the people that want to enjoy and want to appreciate that we're fans and we're in love with this game just like they are, those are the people that I love when they pop on Twitter or on the street and say something, and you're just like, that's the fan that I was when I was sitting watching this game.
And I think your role is so important. I thought the Robbies and I thought Rebecca Lowe were fantastic. The coverage was it was taking the coverage of soccer, no matter what league. You guys took it up a notch, and you've done that when you got the MLS coverage for NBC Sports Network, and it's going even higher now with Barclays Premier League. But, to me, the expats and the Euro snobs, they're going to watch no matter what is going on pregame or halftime or match of the day highlights. They're watching because they're coming for the league. So having a guy with an American accent who knows his stuff there, to me, that is a win, and that's a chance to go, look, you have to watch now. Whether you choose to not watch MLS is on you. But I'm here, and you have to watch because you're watching your league. Now I'm going to prove to you that I know my stuff. And I just think that your role is so vital.
Yeah, thanks, man. And I mean, what's more important for me is Rebecca Lowe, Robbie Musto, Robbie Earl. Those guys are outstanding. And anytime when I was a player, you played with good players that brought your game up. So they are the teammates I could only wish for. But what's important is, expats like me or not, of course it's great to have their support and great to have them give you their sort of stamp of approval. But what's important to me is, I want to reach out and I want to connect and grow this American audience. Yep. There's 20 million people watching NFL on a Sunday night. I want to tap into that group. And if there's anything about me being an American or anything about the way I talk about the game that delivers it in a way that invites them a little bit more, makes them feel a little more involved, and includes them and makes them take ownership and equity in this league and say, oh, wait, this isn't. I know this league's over in England, but this doesn't feel imported. This is our game too.
Exactly.
We can be fans of this. If I can touch any of those people, if I can get any of those guys hooked, then it's such a win. I mean, that's so much more important to me than having some of the Euro snobs, as you call them, say, okay, this guy's okay,
How helpful was it for you to be able to sit out the first day and watch the show as it's presented on Saturday and then jump in on Sunday? Or would you rather have just dove into the deep end and say, let's just get it going?
Yeah, it was helpful because those guys did such an outstanding job, and I got to sort of see how they got through it and all that. But what was difficult was I was doing the Red Bulls Union game, so I basically was watching a little bit of the games, and then just got into MLS mode, went over to Red Bull Arena, called the game there, and hopped in a car and got to Stanford at like 1 a.m. to be in the studio at 6 a.m.
Wow.
So, it was not an ideal first weekend for me, but again, the team I have at NBC, the support. I mean, there's 20 or 30 people that are in that complex working on Premier League, making sure everything runs smoothly and goes good. I mean, a lot of people have been given great, compliments about the opening weekend, but they have to understand that, and they probably wouldn't be surprised if they saw how many really professional, incredible, talented people are involved in making sure that thing is the best viewing and the best broadcast that we can possibly send out to people.
When you guys have uplink problems, as you do a satellite feed to the stadiums in England, do you begin to sweat? Do you look at Rebecca going, okay, Rebecca, your job. You
know what's amazing about her is she's unflappable. She's like, you'll watch her all season long. Nothing can shake that girl. She's incredible. And, it's live TV. So at this point, I've been doing live sports for long enough where nothing's going to be perfect. And, you just don't freak out. And what's funny is some people get really upset at certain things like, oh, feed did this, sound did this. And NBC doesn't even have control of those things. Yeah. So it's funny. It's funny that some of the criticisms of the opening weekend were things that weren't even NBC's control. And, that's a positive. When you have an opening weekend and some of the biggest complaints were something that you had no control over, that's a pretty good weekend technically.
Well, and also I always feel like, and I know you're not going to agree because everybody wants to be 100% all the time. We're getting every single game that is being played over there, which is more that they're getting in the actual country where the games are being played.
I know. What someone asked me earlier, they said, is this too much? No, are we delivering too much? Are we giving too much to the American fan base? And then what I said to that is, when I grew up watching the league, one of my teams that I loved watching was Bolton because I follow players. I don't follow teams. And J.J. Okocha was someone that I just couldn't take my eyes off of. But I literally could see Bolton every 8 games. You know what I mean? So it was like, you saw them probably 2-3 times a year. So every weekend I'd flip on and be like, oh, man, Bolton's not playing. Bolton's not playing. And so now the Kyle Martino that loves Bolton gets to watch every single Bolton game. So
yeah, I mean, I'm an Ajax fan because when I was a kid, ESPN2 had the rights and would play them 8:00 Sunday morning, and they were undefeated that season, so they were on every single week. So that was the only team I was watching every week.
Yeah.
It's good.
And also, I mean, the relegation battle is just as exciting as the title race. So you want to know these teams. You want to know, what's going on with Sunderland and Newcastle last year, and why are they giving up so many goals? Oh, there's a new coach that's coming. You want to know those little nuances because come those last 3 games, the last month of the season, it's going to be crazy drama, and you want to, it's like walking in the last episode of Sopranos. I mean, how confused and upset would you be? You're like, wait, what's going on? Is that guy dead? Who is that? He's got a gun.
Wait, did he die? In your opinion?
I have no idea. You want to know what's so funny about that analogy? I didn't watch The Sopranos.
Oh, come on!
I know. But you want to know what's good about that is now I can go back and start from day one. How envious
you don't have to wait weeks or years for episodes. You can just start and finish whenever you want.
Exactly.
NBC Sports Network's Kyle Martino, thank you for being so generous with your time. We appreciate it, Kyle.
Anytime, man. Love talking with you guys.
Pitch Pass.
This is your voice. This is my red, white, and blue. This is my anthem to you.
For more show information, go to pitchpass.com.